With President Trump facing possible impeachment, moderate Democrats in swing districts are confronted with a difficult decision. Should they oppose the impeachment of a president for whom a majority of their constituents voted in 2016, or should they support the impeachment process and possibly put their political futures at risk? One member of Congress, Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey's 11th Congressional District, has decided to back the impeachment inquiry. She's part of a group of 7 freshman Democratic lawmakers in swing districts who urge Congress to find out if President Trump abused his power while dealing with Ukraine. She spoke about her decision with NJTV News.
To see that we have a president who has gone to the head of a country fighting a war with Russia and withheld critical armaments and then pressured the president of Ukraine to investigate a competitor of the president's in the election just really crossed a line for me, and I think really threatens our national security here at home.
And joining us now with more on this story is MetroFocus contributor and State of Affairs anchor, Steve Adubato. Steve, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here after important stuff.
So Congresswoman Sherrill, she kind of explained why she did what she did. I wonder if you could elaborate on that and tell us what kind of consequences she may be facing.
First of all, she's the first Democrat to represent that district in decades. Let's be clear, Republicans have won it. Here's my view of it. I actually interviewed Mikey Sherrill, Congresswoman Sherrill, soon after she took office. And when I asked her about the question of the president, she's like, nah, that impeachment, not too soon. It's going to distract us from what we need to do. My opinion, what she said right there, which is very rare sometimes for members of Congress and other elected officials, that's exactly why she's doing this. Let's remember, she's a veteran. She served in the Navy. She was a fighter pilot. She took an oath. She said, I took 2 oaths, one in Congress, the other to defend our country. She truly believes, I believe she believes, that what the president has done here and that transcript of that conversation and then what has happened since then has caused her to have no choice but to do what she's doing. And she's also led others to go along with her, because I think a lot of these other moderate Democrats would not be where they are, potentially Nancy Pelosi as well, if it were not for Congresswoman Sherrill.
But let's talk about her district. You say that the district for decades has been under Republican control, 35 years to be precise.
That's right.
But let's break it down. I mean, not to take anything away from her, because she didn't have to do this.
No, she didn't.
But those 35 years were, in those 35 years, it was 2 Republicans who served, one for 10 years, Dean Gallo, one for 25 years, Rodney Frelinghuysen. And incumbency has something to do with their holding their seat. That's one. Number 2 is she beat Jay Weber, her opponent, Republican,
a member of the Assembly,
by 15 points. By 15 points, nothing to sneeze at. And Trump only won that district by less than 1%, 0.9%. So, I mean, it's a risk. But compared to some of these other guys and women across the country?
I hear you. And if you want to do the profiles and courage thing, I'm going to argue that there are people putting more at risk than she is. But let's not kid ourselves. The Republican National Committee and President Trump and the incredible ability they have to raise money, largely through incumbency, right? They're going to target Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. They're going to do everything possible.
They've already said they would.
Raf, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, but the fact is, she ran against someone who was not in Congress, Jay Weber. She's going to run against the candidate, no matter whatever that person's name is. He or she is going to have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars potentially to beat Mikey Sherrill. And to say that she's slowing down Congress, slowing down progress because she got involved in this impeachment and therefore Congress shuts down, the president doesn't deal with them, and it's all her fault. They're coming after her. It's a risk.
Yeah. Well, there were 3 other Democrats who flipped seats in 2018. Malinowski actually,
Tom Malinowski?
On the 7th district.
That's right.
Clinton actually won that district. But in District 2, Van Drew.
Jeff Van Drew, you and I talk about South Jersey a lot. Jeff Van Drew is a congressperson representing the southern part of the state. He's conservative. He's conservative moderate. He's a Steve Sweeney, Joe Biden type, even more to the center Democrat.
What's he been saying?
He's not for impeachment.
He's publicly said he's not
Jeff
for it.
Van Drew, sorry for interrupting, Ralph, Congressman Van Drew was saying, look, I may not like what the president did. I think this is unseemly. But you know what? This is bad for the country. Nothing's going to happen. We're not going to deal with infrastructure. We're not going to deal with water issues. We're not going to deal with a whole range of issues that matter. I think what he's saying is this is a bad idea, even if I don't like the president. And there's some other Democrats who feel the same way.
Andy Kim, District 3, also Trump did pretty well in his
did.
district.
He did.
So what's he saying? Anything?
Depends upon what, sorry, Congressman Kim, depends upon what day it is. What I mean by that is there are times he says he supports the inquiry. He supports the inquiry. We need to pursue the inquiry. He does not say he's for impeachment.
But Congresswoman Cheryl.
Oh, no, she's much more aggressive. Yes, she supports the inquiry. But if you really read between the lines, she, it seems to me, is saying, come on, we have this evidence. Yes, we have to go through due process. But there are some Democrats, even if they say they support the inquiry to impeach potentially, they're further along. She's way further along than Congressman Kim.
Over the last few weeks, there have been events where some of these Democratic moderates across the country have participated where they have been challenged publicly. I mean,
on impeachment.
On impeachment, yeah. Max Rose in Staten Island.
Staten Island, right.
There was a demonstration outside his office because he also has supported the impeachment inquiry. You see that beginning to happen here in New Jersey?
You know what's so interesting? First of all, I'm glad that members of Congress hold these town meetings because they're in Washington so much. They need to be home.
One of them in Michigan. I mean, she was lambasted.
But I will say this in New Jersey. So far in New Jersey, and this could be because the poll numbers in New Jersey show that a significant percentage, a significant majority of people in New Jersey favor impeachment. Not just the inquiry, but the removal from office. They're jumping all the way to there. So far, at virtually every town meeting from a member of Congress who has been out front on this and been critical of the president and moving toward impeachment, they have not had the kind of vitriol that you're describing right now, that Max Rose, if you will, faced in Staten Island. They have not faced that yet.
So, all things being equal, assuming that no new blockbuster thing happens
Big
with
assumption.
the impeachment. Yeah. Well, assuming that, if impeachment is the predominant issue between now and election, how do you think that's going to impact the Democrats around the country and the Democrats, particularly in New Jersey?
I think the Democrats like Jeff Van Drew down the South, I believe he believes, and I think he's right, that most of the people in his district, even though he's a Democrat, do not support impeachment. Assuming things stay the same. Yeah. I think Congresswoman Cheryl is going to have a very, very tough time because of the money that comes in, even if more people support impeachment in a district than don't. I think for Andy Kim, Congressman Kim and Tom Malinowski, it depends upon who their opponents are, how much money is spent there, and the way, truthfully, they play this. Because if they move to a more aggressive impeachment proceeding, I think it could affect their races very much. Listen, New Jersey, 4 members, Raf, 4 Democrats previously held by Republicans. That was in some ways a big part of the balance of power in the lower house. New Jersey could lead the country in this way or dictate ultimately where the House goes.
All right. Well, Steve, we'll end it there. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see what develops.
23 years together, Raf.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add
It
that.
just
Sorry.
seems like yesterday.
Well, maybe more longer than that. I'm only kidding. Good to be with you.
Same here.